Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squad for boxing news and views from around the internet. Anthony Joshua has continued his targeted campaign to strike back at his longtime rivals Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, saying on ESPN's Jalen and Jacoby that both his rivals are envious of him, and he's again taken to calling Wilder out on American soil. So before I get to the specific comments and some thoughts along the way, because I'll drop thoughts, in between the different comments, I'd note first that Joshua has been in the United States doing a mixture of training, holidaying, and more recently, these media interviews, these media calls. He's also attending the Canelo fight in New York. So what separates this trip from the one that he took to the United States earlier in 2018 is just how much more visible that Joshua is. And this time, unlike last time, he's trying to make a lot more noise for his next fight. He's not shy about pot-shotting his rivals to do that, trying to goad them into it. There's a very clear and deliberate strategy at play. In some ways, he's doing what Wilder and Fury were doing at different points in the past year, which was to effectively make juicy or controversial statements and then watch the media and social media avalanche ensue. And because Joshua hasn't typically been one to respond to allegations or statements that are levelled in his direction, Wilder and Fury were able to get some of their mud to stick, create a narrative that Joshua was scared or he didn't want the fight or he was fighting nobodies, and these are some of the things that have been gaining a bit of traction online. There's more of that sentiment floating around now than there was a year ago. So in many respects, it's good to see Joshua going out hard in the United States, trying to turn the tables on his rivals, using effectively some of the same sort of tactics that they use successfully time and time again when talking about him. So expect him to keep up the pressure as he looks to secure either Wilder or Fury for April at Wembley. Because it's become abundantly clear he doesn't want to be labelled with the tag of ducking these other guys. And it was in that vein that he appeared on Jalen and Jacoby, saying it took 10 years in their career for Wilder and Fury to find their voice. That he's been in the game 5 years, made 7 heavyweight title defences, Olympic champion, and they've been watching him from the outline, and he feels like they've been building up a lot of envy. And no doubt that statement is going to set some fans off. We've seen in a few interviews now that Joshua's been making much of the length of his rivals' careers in comparison to his own. Then he'll list his achievements, which he's achieved in half the time. And the inference is clear. He's saying they've not achieved nearly as much as he has in double the time. And on top of that, they've been watching his rise with a degree of envy. They want what he has. And the next part, it was interesting because Joshua described watching Wilder and Fury and it being the first time that he sat back and thought, that should have been me. And I think that's how a majority of fight fans felt earlier in the year when demand for an undisputed fight was rampant. We had the months of negotiation that ultimately came to nothing. And for all we know, Joshua may get that same feeling again if Wilder and Fury rematch each other again soon. Certainly because of all the drama of the first Fury and Wilder fight, and now a possible rematch, I do get a sense that the calls for undisputed are not as loud as they were before December 1st. And with Wilder and Fury having the option of each other, not just Joshua, that's also on the table for them, but they've got the option of each other. It could explain in part why Joshua is coming out so hard to try to land one of them for Wembley. He won't want people to think that he's targeting the second tier guys. He wants to be in with one of those two guys because that's who fans do want to see him in with. And Joshua, then he went back to envy, saying Fury and Wilder had been building up their envy, that now they've got a voice, it's just starting to spill out of them. And he could see where it's coming from, but he said don't let that passion turn into envy. And he said he wasn't a hater, that he respected what they were doing. Certainly all this talk of envy, Anthony Joshua saying that his rivals are envious, is going to get up some people's noses. And are Wilder and Fury, are they envious of Joshua? The success, the adoration from fans, the endorsements, the money that they haven't been making until now? They'll never admit it, even if they were. But they have been using each other to raise each other up. And after their fight, they are bigger stars than before they fought each other on December 1st. And in terms of, are they just finding their voice? I'm not so sure about that. I think they've always had a voice. They've never been afraid to use it, but what's changed is their voice is getting louder now that their star power is growing. More people are listening. And the fact that Joshua is addressing them so directly and openly, accusing them of envy while saying he was on the outside looking in at the December 1st fight, wishing he was the one fighting, that's interesting. I have actually seen a number of commenters in recent comment sections saying that Fury and Wilder have turned the table so much so now that Joshua is using their name to stay relevant. I'm not really buying that, but certainly he is not shy about calling them out as he searches for an opponent that fans want to see in April at Wembley. And please, if you're dropping a comment to this video, be respectful of others' opinions. There's no need to be abusive. Some of the stuff that was in the last comment section was just outright ridiculous. People are allowed to have their views, as can you. That last comment section, a shambles. People just went absolutely feral, and there were so many withheld comments, it was ridiculous. And the withheld ones are the real heinous sort of ones. So please keep it respectful. Joshua, he went on to say, there's enough food on the table for everyone to eat, but someone has to get the biggest slice. And he's willing to fight the champion in London on April the 13th. And he didn't know why they were talking about ducking and dodging. Okay, so with that, we're effectively back to money. The biggest slice, it's the real issue why this fight isn't getting made with Wilder or Fury right now. Both those guys want 50%. And if it were that simple, just giving 50-50, this fight would have been made a long time ago. Joshua says he isn't willing to give fantasy deals. And that's why we have this impasse. Wilder and Fury, they want 50%. Joshua's not willing to give it. That's why a deal is not getting done. And the impasse is money, and it gives rise to the ducking and dodging stuff, but on both sides. Some fans feel Joshua is pricing himself out of the fight. Some fans think Wilder and Fury are pricing themselves out of the fight. There is no clear consensus on what everyone should get, what's a fair deal, and what it should look like. It's kind of like herding cats. It's just an impossible task. But arguably, Wilder and Fury, they do stand to get a bigger slice if they rematch each other, then go after Joshua. While Joshua's promoter, Eddie Hearn, he will no doubt want to get Wilder or Fury now because he can pay them less now while their value isn't as high. The economics of this whole thing, it could, drag on for God knows how long. Joshua, he also waded in on the draw that Fury and Wilder have just fought to on December 1st, saying that he thought it was a draw, and that while Fury outboxed Wilder for the most part, the knockdowns really helped Wilder. And he went on to say, and it was quite an interesting quote, when you're in another man's kingdom, you want to take his queen. You can't expect to hold her by the finger and run away. You've got to slay the king. And if Fury wanted to win, that's what he had to do. Certainly an interesting take, and there's going to be some fans saying that Fury didn't dominate Wilder enough, given the knockdowns, to take the title. That has been a flavour coming through from some fans, although a majority, from what I can tell online, do believe Fury won by a couple of rounds. But, that's all in the books now. It's a draw. And to round out the interview, Joshua, he was asked, would he like to fight the winner of the rematch? To which he said he's not interested in fighting the winner of the rematch, saying, let's fight now while the opportunity's hot. Let's get it on the table. And the opportunity, it is there right now. But maybe it's not as hot as it once was given the recent Wilder-Fury fight. But really, what it does boil back to, and we can't get away from it, is just inescapable. It's money. All these guys can talk blue in the face, about what they want to do, how much they want, how much they deserve. But ultimately, the deal, the splits, it dictates what happens next. So I would really like to hear one of these interviewers ask Anthony Joshua, if he is to have more of these interviews in the United States, what's not a fantasy deal? What are you prepared to give these guys? What are they worth? Because right now we don't know what the offer is because they are keeping negotiations quiet. But it's a minimum guarantee percentage deal with a rematch. That's to the Wilder camp. Not sure what's happening on the Fury front. Frank Warren's denied that any negotiations have been happening. But really, what is a fair deal? Because I would like someone to ask Anthony Joshua that, because he says he deserves the biggest slice. But how big is that bigger slice compared to the smaller slice? What do you make of it all? What did you make of Anthony Joshua's comments? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.